morning. I'm Dilip Thakore, editor of Education World.
Good morning, I'm Summiya Yasmeen, managing editor.
This month we want to tell you about the second installment of our Education World India School Rankings, which over the last some 15 years since it was launched.
It was launched in 2007, our first
survey has evolved into the world's largest school ranking survey.
Yes, it ranks over 3,000 of India's top ranked schools across 10 categories, including co-ed day-cum boarding, legacy boarding schools, international schools, special needs schools, government schools, and most importantly across 14 parameters of education excellence.
The idea is creating so many categories is that we want to compare like with like.
Yes.
And create an even playing field for all, ranking and rating all schools.
Yes. So in our first November in Education World India School Rankings Part 1, we had covered day schools, day-cum boarding schools, and government schools as well as special needs schools.
Yes.
So now in part 2, we are doing boarding, international, budget private schools, and we've also included the Education World India preschool rankings.
So over the two issues, we have ranked preschools right up to higher secondaries.
Yes, that's correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is the world, as we keep boasting, but hardly anyone takes notice, that's the world's largest school ranking survey.
Yes, and it's also mind-boggling in its geographical reach, Dilip. We must tell our viewers that schools in 351 cities and towns across India have been ranked. It's quite a mind-boggling number, 351 cities and towns.
Yeah, the idea is to encourage people who everybody has ignored, especially especially the media, in small towns who are doing a very difficult job of educating with a lot of government interference, language issues, fees issues. Despite that, many of them are doing an excellent job in educating at least India's middle class. And though the majority of these schools are private schools, as you stated earlier, it's even government schools are ranked.
Yes, government
and even special needs, and even budget private schools, which are affordable schools for lower middle class and working class people. So we don't have any particular prejudice in terms of having a private sector bias. It just so happens that the best schools in India happen to be private schools.
Yes.
And the performance of a government school leaves much to be desired.
No, but we must highly recommend that you read this issue. Most detailed, most comprehensive, especially for parents. It's a very good ready reckoner and a reference guide for them to decide and choose schools which are aptitudinally suitable for their children. When you look at all our 14 parameters, which includes parameters such as competence of faculty, leadership and management quality, co-curricular education, and this year, especially in our rankings, we've introduced 2 new parameters, which is online education effectiveness and mental and emotional well-being services. Because of the pandemic, we realized that these 2 parameters are very important to evaluate schools in the pandemic year.
Yeah, which was because India suffered the world's longest schools lockdown of almost 60 to 65 weeks. I hate to think what the learning loss of children has been during this period. Anyway, to go into the specifics of this issue, we have of course our cover story, which ranks boarding schools, which is in 3 main categories: boarding schools, co-ed girls and boys, international schools, day-cum boarding, fully residential, most respected budget private schools, and also pre-primary schools.
Yes.
So it's a huge issue, some 300 pages.
Yes, and pre-primaries, because the pandemic has hit the early childhood education sector the hardest.
Yes.
We've had to restrict and there've been a lot of closure of preschools. we've this year had to restrict our preschool ranking survey, just like last year, to the 6 metros, Dilip. So Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata, Chennai, Hyderabad, and Bangalore have been ranked. Preschools in these cities have
On the
been ranked.
presumption that in smaller towns, they're probably many of them are shut down.
Yes, and here also we've introduced a very the new parameter of online interaction.
Yes, though of course for the smallest children, online interaction is not recommended.
Yeah. And we must also reiterate the innovation we've done in the Education World India School rankings this year. Our faculty of competence score includes scores evaluated by schools in an online test,
Yes.
which was administered by the Center for Teacher Accreditation, which is a very well-known Bangalore-based teacher certification organization.
Yes, and of course, but this was voluntary, and
Yes.
not many schools have the courage to
Yes.
send their children, send their teachers
Yeah,
to
but
take
hopefully
this test.
this was the first year and is the beginning. We hope and encourage many more schools next year to write this entire test.
Yes. Apart from our cover story, of course, we have our usual
Education
sections:
news.
education news,
Editorial page,
editorial page,
book reviews.
expert comment.
Yeah.
Well, the whole lot, and
Yeah.
of course our postscript page,
Page.
where we talk about things which are off the radar of the media. So we also, following this, we also had the Education World India School Awards Night,
Yes.
to which we invited a lot of industry leaders, but unfortunately the heads of FICCI, heads of ASSOCHAM and others didn't respond to our invitation, as neither did the Union Education Minister or any of the...
But nevertheless, entirely their loss, because the event was very successful.
Yes.
And though it was restricted because of the pandemic, we had a wonderful response, and it was our delight and pleasure to interact in person with the heads and trustees and promoters of India's top ranked schools.
Yeah, over 700, 800, 1,000.
Over 2 days. This was over 2 days, so we didn't maintain social distancing norms. Though the number may seem overwhelming, it was staggered over 2 days.
Yes. Just to end up, it's funny how the leaders of India Inc. Don't seem to make a connection between accumulation of money capital and developing human capital. We repeatedly invite them to attend our events, or perhaps interact with us. But there's no shortage of duffers in India Inc. who don't seem to make the connection who don't seem to understand that to accumulate money capital, you first have to develop your human capital.
Correct.
Well, hopefully they will learn eventually, though of course time's running out. Anyway, that's it.
Anyway, before we go, let's tell you about ParentsWorld. In ParentsWorld, we've done a very interesting cover story. We've spoken about grandparents' big pandemic comeback. So in this story, we talk about how during the pandemic, grandparents have stepped up, to the challenge of not just providing emotional security, but also helping their children's children cope with online schooling, household chores. They've been great support and great help. And we in this story say why it's important for grandparents to be involved in their grandchildren's life. It makes for, developing happy and confident young adults.
Yes, this is a very interesting story for millennials in particular, who seem to have like a contempt and who suffer from a lot of ageism against older people. So one of the benefits of the pandemic has been that grandparents, who hitherto beginning to be ignored and sidelined, have stepped up to the plate and helped to save the education, harmony and stability of a large number of families across the country.
Yes, indeed.
So we recommend this ParentsWorld story also to you.
Yes, and before we go, we want to wish all our viewers and readers a very happy and prosperous 2022. We hope to see the back of the pandemic, and we hope that especially schools, colleges, preschool will reopen fully physically and welcome children back with teachers and students learning and enjoying their education.
Indeed. So we wish you a happier new year than you had last year.
Thank
Thank you.
you.